Hi everyone, welcome back. This is Deborah. Today I'm doing a viewer request and this came from Grace. Grace has asked me to take a Stamperia paper pack and show her how to use it to make a junk journal. So hopefully there are other people who would like to know this as well. The paper I'm using is called Blues, which is a really pretty paper. So that's the front cover, and usually on the front cover you'll get something on the back of it. So you can use the back paper. So what I'm doing now is just having a look at the paper pack, and I'm looking in particular at this one with the bird on it, checking the back. Now Stamperia are fairly consistent in how they present their paper packs. There'll usually be something like this, even if you're not working with this particular pack. Now if I put this in the cutter this way, I'm obviously going to cut the bird, and I don't want to do that. So I will need to turn it on its side, and then you have to determine how tall you want your pages. So in terms of the width, it will be 12 inches. When I score that, it will end up at 6 inches. So check where the image is and make sure you're not about to cut through it, and then take your pack and your piece of paper and cut it. Now I'm using a Keogh trimmer here, and it is a 12-inch paper trimmer, but it only goes to 9 inches wide. So that's why it might look a bit funny to you that only I don't have a 12 by 12. Now I've cut that paper down, and you can see that I've taken full advantage of the bird and the fact that you can see that bird there. I cut it down to 8 inches tall. I often find with Stamperia that 8 inches is a good height. Now with this one, I'm just indicating that I'm going to cut this at the top because I like that artist word that's there. I also like what's on the back. So don't be worried whether you're cutting something at the top part of the paper or the bottom part of the paper. You have to look for the image and see what you think is best. So that's the part that I actually thought was the best in this instance. Now these are a tag sheet. They always have a tag sheet with 12 tags on it. So cut round them. Now you can cut these by hand as well. Just check the back. There's usually nothing, a plainish paper on the back of their tags. How I cut the tags is I start at the edge and I trim that edge off, and then I go to the next one across. So I've got a set of 3 and trim that, and then just push it across. So what I can do now is I can just cut the in-between parts with the scissors, and it's much quicker if I take these little edges off. It's about 1/4 of an inch, it's not much, and it's easier to do, I find, if I put it into the paper trimmer. So I'm just going through and chopping all of those bits off. Now when you get to the last one, take the 1/4 of an inch, or that whatever the distance is in there, and then turn the piece around so that you can take the other side off. Now that's how it works in my trimmer. You might have a trimmer that works differently to that, but this is how I do mine. And then of course you can toss all those little bits in the bin. Now you can of course put these into your paper trimmer as well, and you can see I've trimmed the bottom, and I will then do the top by hand. It just depends how you want to do it. I think that bit at the top is quite easy to trim by hand, but if you want to take the time to do this little bit on the bottom and to cut them up, then you can do that as well. Now just go through and cut all the tops off. It's fairly easy. They're usually a tiny little bit rounded, and that makes, I think, them easier to cut than if they were perfectly straight. I'm using my Tim Holtz scissors, which cut really well, and I would encourage you to get a pair of decent craft scissors. I think they're one of the most important things to have, and my preference are these Tim Holtz ones, which I've had forever and still cut beautifully. So just take all of the tops off all of the tags. Now just because we're taking them off and making them into tags doesn't mean that I'm actually going to use them as tags. So I'm going to use some of them as a tag, but others I'm going to do some other creative things with. and you'll see that coming up in a moment. Now I'm working through some other papers. So this one is a page in the paper pack, and I like the string tie that's up the top. So in this instance, I'm going to take that top section, and that's going to become a page in my book. So I also like the image that's down the bottom, but cutting it at 8 inches, I still get that image that's down on the bottom piece. I haven't cut through that as such. Now this one here is usually something that's also in a paper pack of Stamperia, and it's a bunch of stuff. In this instance, it's letters and journaling spots and things like that, and I'll be cutting that apart later. Now you'll also find they have some plain pieces like this one. When I say plain, there's no feature image. It's still a beautiful image, and this has got music on it, so I'm just checking which way the music goes, and that's probably something to be aware of. If you have music or words or something, you probably don't want them appearing upside down. Now this is a pretty random one. It's got music going in both directions. It's just a matter of looking at it and choosing the direction that you think you like the best. There's no right or wrong answer. It's really a personal preference, and overall I'm going to choose the way that the majority of the words and the music on both sides are going. Don't forget the back side as well as the front, and that's why I'm cutting it how I did. And the next one is also reasonably plain, although it's got this artist thing down on the bottom right hand side again. So I'm going to take that and cut the 8-inch piece so that I retain that artist one. Now this next piece is something also that you will find in Stamperia packs. I like this image with the envelopes all down the bottom. So if you've got something like this, it may not be identical, but just look at what's on the other side and then determine where you're going to cut it. Now with this one here, I'm actually going to cut that at the 8-inch mark so that I've got a piece with that on it down the bottom. Here's another of these more random ones, and again I'm checking to see which way the words are going because it does have some writing on it, and I'm cutting out the piece that works best for me. And this here is the same with the envelopes, but this is the back, so obviously I can't use it with that back page exposed. However, I can do something with it, and I'll show you in a moment. Now just going back to this one here, this is a whole bunch of things that are going to be great for journaling. I'm taking my scissors and I'm going to cut around the different things. Now this has got sort of irregular edges on it because it looks like layered pieces of paper. So you can either cut it straight, but I prefer to try and follow along some of those edges so that I get a bit more of a random look. Either way it'll work fine. It's just how I like to work. And you'll find that the Stamperia packs will all have a page that kind of looks like this. It may not have these random edges on it. Now when I come to doing these edges, because I know that they're not straight, I just put them in the scissors and I kind of wriggle them up and down, back and forth like I'm doing now, to simulate the sort of torn edge of something. So just continue on cutting them out. Now because I know I'm going to use all of these pieces, I tend just to cut them out all at once. So now this is going back to the back page. So we know that it's got the back page is on the back, and I'm looking at a creative way to use it. And so what I'm going to do is going to use the scissors and just chop around the edges of these envelopes because they're just too pretty. And I know we've got 2 of them because I've got one as an actual page in the paper pack, but this is the second one that they've put in. And you want to be able to use them. Normally you'll get 10 pages in a Stamperia paper pack, plus what's on the front cover, the reverse of the front cover, plus what's on the back cover, the reverse of the back cover. So you actually get 10 plus 2. And I'm just determining where to cut this because some of this is a little bit fuzzy, and I actually change my mind in the end, and I go back and I cut into a piece that I haven't done at the moment to try and follow the line of the envelopes a little bit more. So again, just hand cutting that with the scissors. And don't forget that you can ink all your edges if you're concerned about, when you cut it. In fact, after you've cut something like this, it's quite nice to ink the edges. So I'm just determining that I do need to cut this piece out and follow that envelope a little bit more because it just looks a little off. So always take time to sit back and have a look at what you've done and see what's going to work the best. And in this instance, I decided I did need to chop that little bit there off. Now I'm taking my scoreboard and I'm going to score all these in half. Now they're all 8 inches by 12 inches. So the score line will be at the 6-inch mark. I find that that's quite a good size, an 8 by 6 junk journal. And I think that these pages, particularly Stamperia papers, lend themselves to that sort of size. So now in double quick time, I'm going to go through and do the rest of my pages and just get them all folded and burnished. And then the next step would be to work out how you want them. Now you can have them how you folded them, but don't forget you can also fold them the other way, depending on how you want to use them. So for example, I might want that bird on the front cover, so I've had to turn it the other way, and I'm doing the same with this piece, just to mix it up a bit. I think that that's part of it, and you also have to work out where you want your pages. So at the moment I'm just tucking them into one another, but you may well want to have your pages in a different order, just depending on what you want. I'm also taking the piece that I fussy cut, and I'm not going to score it on that top edge. I'm going to turn it over and come down from the straight edge, and that way I know where to score it. So I'm basically just scoring this in half. Now the other thing I do is I like to use tea-dyed papers in my papers, in my junk journals, and Stamperia papers usually lend themselves to that because often they'll have an undertone of a brown, and you can see that in this paper pack, but if you look in a lot of the others, even the ones that are pink and pretty, you will still see an undertone of a brown. Now the pages I use are just A4 copy paper. Now this is always going to be too big, by 1/4 of an inch. They will be 8 1/4, and my book is 8 inches. So I just put them all in my trimmer at once and just trim that edge off, all of them. So I usually take about 5 papers. I find that 5 seems to be quite a good number. The other thing I use is this craft cardstock 12 by 12. I think again, because it's got those brown tones, it lends itself to the papers. So I'm just trimming all of these down so that they are 12 inches by 8 inches tall. Now take one of these, and with the image that you've fussy cut, like this one, I'm now going to make a big pocket out of this. So the craft cardstock will be the actual page, but this piece that I fussy cut will become a big pocket. And you can see what I mean by the craft cardstock going really well with the Stamperia papers. And I was just trying to think of other Stamperia papers. I've used a lot of them, and they all have this sort of undertone in them. So this colour craft cardstock is a staple in my craft supplies. I tend to buy, a whole pack at once, which is 25 sheets. But if you don't want to do that, you don't have to. It's just what I do, and then I always have it on hand. Now take one of the strips that you cut off. You should have plenty that are 4 inches by 12 inches, and I'm going to do what's called a Rita Donnelly flip. So you take the cardstock and you fold it over into a triangle, and then you will make sure it's lined up properly, burnish it down, and then just cut the triangle piece. So you can use your trimmer. I'm just using my scissors to do this. And then put some glue on the two straight edges of the triangle and stick it down on your page. Now, if you're going to stick it down, I usually use the cardstock to stick it onto, so you've got some contrast. And you put the two edges on either side, make sure it's all lined up, and then you've now created both a pocket, so you can put a tag in it like that, and a journaling spot so that you can write on that. And it's a hidden journaling spot, so you can't see it until you actually open it up then. Now we need to use up all of these 4" by 12" pieces. So with this one, I'm going to cut it at the 6" mark. In fact, I'm cutting it a tiny bit shy of the 6 inches because I want to be able to put it in my journal. And I want to leave a little bit so that it doesn't go all the way to the edge, but almost to the edge. And I'm going to make a pocket with this. So my first thing would be to cut a notch out of it, and I'm using a 1.5" hole punch to do that. And I'm just working out which edge I want that cut on. And the reason I don't cut it the full 6 inches is so that it doesn't interfere with the spine. I'm leaving a tiny little bit, maybe a 1/16 of an inch on either side, so that when I'm turning the book, my spine is free and clear of the pocket and nothing's actually being caught up. Now you can punch this out by eyeballing it, which is what I'm doing, or you can measure it. And I just take a little tiny bit. I don't take a big bite out of this. I'm just looking to make sure that my words are all up the right way and that it's about in the center. Now, just like the pattern cardstock, you will have left over some 12" by 4" plain cardstock. So what I'm doing here is just doing another of those Rita Donnelly flips. And this is a little bit thicker, so it takes a little time just to get that fold right. But this time I'm then going to fold it over and I'm going to do another piece. So I'm just lining it up, and then I'll score this down with my scoring tool, just burnish that to create my crease. And then it needs to get folded back again to create the other part of the pocket. And it doesn't want to cooperate because it's a bit stiffer and then the paper is, and therefore it's not wanting to bend how I want it to bend, but I'll get it to do it. It's just a matter of fiddling with it for a little bit. And then you need to just trim the little piece that's left over. Now you could open it all up and do that in your cutter, or you can just cut it with the scissors, which is what I am doing. And now I have a double Rita Donnelly, so it looks a bit like a concertina and up and down. And this will go onto the pattern paper, and now I'm just hooking it over the corner, over the edge of the paper, so that I get a pocket on both sides. Just determining which is the best side to put it on. So if you're going to one side you will put it on, you'll need to hook it across the edge of the paper on the side, and if you do it on the other side it probably hooks around the bottom of the paper. Either way it works fine, it doesn't really matter. You just do it the best way that you want to and put it to get it to be where you want it to be. So now I'm opening this up just to put some glue on it so that I can create my pocket. Now the next thing I'm going to do is use some of these tags. So I've cut a piece from one of the leftover bits of cardstock, and I've got 3 tags. And remember I said that we weren't going to use them all as tags. Well, now in this instance I'm going to create a belly band with them. So I'm using the piece of cardstock as my base, and I'm just rearranging them a bit to see what looks best. because I need it not to be as big or to be the same length, the height, as the page in the book. And then I want the width to be whatever the widths of the tags are. So if you've got tags, and if you're using Stamperia, you will have a set of tags in it, and just determine where you want it. So I'm starting with the top one, and you can put them straight. I'm putting them on angles, but not massive angles. And I'm also just changing the angle slightly so they're all not tilted in the same way. Just working out where I want them. And this one's going to go slightly to the right, and then the final one at the bottom will go slightly to the left. Now while I'm doing this, I'm making sure that I'm covering all of that cardstock. I don't want any of it to show, but I'm using that as the base because that's much easier than just trying to stick them all together. And you can see how they've overlapped the edge of that. Now I'm going to put this in my cutter, and because I've cut the belly band, the craft, to the correct size for the piece of paper, I now need to trim off the tags that are overlapping just on the top and bottom. So I'm just looking at where that is and trimming that little bit off and flipping it around and doing the same for the bottom. And then you can see that I've now got slightly altered in what it looks like. Now with the top one, I've taken the tag part off it, so I'm just going to recreate the tag, and I'm using a different tag as a template because I want that angle to be the same, otherwise it's going to look odd. So by using a tag that came out of the book, I'm achieving what I want to get the same angle as the other two. And now I'm taking a piece of the book, a page from the book, and I'm going to stick this down. Now when I stick this down, I only need to stick it on the top and the bottom. I'm just trimming that off a little bit, not very much, just a tiny little bit off. And I'll center it in the book so that it is a vertical belly band. You can also do horizontal belly bands, but this one is a vertical one. And I have to look at what's going to go behind it. So see, you can put something all the way through it, but I'll have to create something to do that. So a little bit of glue top and bottom to create our belly band. Now I need a piece to go in there, and I'm thinking that I can use another one of these 12 by 4 inch pieces. So I'm going to start by folding this in half lengthways because I think it's going to be perfect to put behind the belly band. Now I'm taking the piece that we fussy cut before. So again, this is the inside back page, and it's got a really lovely piece of hessian all the way down the side of it, which I really like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that off. So it must be about 2 inches wide, and it's just really, really pretty. So if you've got Stamperia papers with a feature like this, then this is a different way that you can use them. Just think about the fact that you don't have to use them where they are. You can actually cut things apart and cut them down and reposition them. So I've got another piece or a page of the craft stock, and I'm going to create a pocket down the side, and then I'm going to put some of the tags in it. So this will be a long skinny pocket. Now it's not a really big pocket, but these little tags fit perfectly in it. They'll just be held in there. I'll just wait till it dries before I actually do that though. Now on the inside I'm going to use one of these envelopes, and I want to create a pocket with it, but I don't want it to be a tiny pocket. I want it to be reasonably large. So because of this, I'm intending to create some edges for it. So basically I'm going to put some paper around the inside of the edge so that my pocket is actually really useful and I don't lose a lot of it to the glue that I would use to stick it down onto the page with normally. So I'm going to take the other piece of the craft cardstock that I had before and cut it down so that I can create a piece to attach this to the cardstock with. So my first step is to score this in half. Then I'll fold it and burnish it. And I'm just going to miter the edges. So that's just going to mean that I have a piece of cardstock that's not going to be really bulky on the edges. And then I can put it down. So I stick one side on the bottom of the pocket and the other side will be stuck on the page. Now if it's a bit big like mine was, just trim it down a little bit and it will work fine. And then a bit of glue on one side to stick it to the actual faux pocket or faux envelope that we've got in the paper pack. And then you can stick it down onto the cardstock using the piece that you've just created. So I think I'll leave it there today, and I'll come back tomorrow and show you more on how to finish this off. Thanks very much for watching. This is Deborah. Cheers.